Hello, my friends. Welcome to the latest edition of Here's What We Know. And this one's going to be a fun one because it could end up going anywhere and everywhere because Carrie E. has done anything and everything. And her background is, you know, the polite term is varied.
Thank you.
You have a very varied because like me, I'm a one trick pony, right? I am that dancing monkey. I always tell everybody. I sit in the corner with my cymbals and they go ching 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 ching. But you kind of went all and about and everything, and we're going to end up talking about the book you're working on right now. But before we get there, let's start at the beginning. Born in New Orleans.
Yes, and it will probably come out the more we talk. Born in New Orleans, raised in Texas. I twang more now than I ever have in my life, which is odd because I live in Idaho and I've been in the Pacific Northwest for over 30 years. But when I'm very tired or extremely mad, I twang so much that I can't even understand myself. And I do appreciate, I would like to clarify for your audience, there are some things I have not done in my life and my career. I would just like to clarify that before we launch any further. There are a few things I have not dabbled in.
Wow, Carrie, you took that darker than I ever intended. Anyway, yeah, I had to. I can speak without an accent because it was driven out of us when I got into radio, and I got into radio in Alabama, right?
Oh my!
But for some reason, they did not want us because that's where I'm from. I'm from L.A., Lower Alabama. That's how we talk, and they did not want us to sound like the people we were talking to.
Yeah, a lot of logic in that.
Yeah. So they forced us to learn how to speak without the accent. But I'm the same way. If I'm tired, if I've had a martini, if I talk to my family, but my family has got such, I have to translate for my wife. I'm not even kidding. My nephew will say something, and I'll tell my wife. I said he asked you how was the flight, and are you hungry?
Oh yeah, are you hungry? Yeah. So by the end of this show, no one will be able to understand us. I predict that ahead of time.
Then my work here is done.
Okay,
that's all
true.
I need. And the good thing is thanks to AI, you hit the transcript button, and now that's even fun because now it's up to AI to try to figure out what we've just said.
Yes. Do you remember when Dragon came out? It was like the greatest thing for writers. It was, you just spoke what you wanted to write. And it was just there for you. It never worked for Southern people, and it never, ever worked for me. I would speak what I wanted it to write very concisely, and it would come back with the most outrageous things because it could not work around my drawl. So
listen, voice text is the worst invention in the history of mankind.
Yes.
For some reason, it worked for my wife. And again, she was raised in like Oregon and Iowa, but I may have that same problem. And I'm like, at no point would I ever tell anybody to pickle a turkey. Why?
Well,
why would you
never
put
know.
Those words together?
Trends change. You never know. And pickled foods are really good for your gut health now. So you may need to pretty soon be able to tell someone to do that. But yes, I have a feeling that voice text has probably ended many a relationship unintentionally because of what it comes up with. I do think that. So I just type the old-fashioned way, and it takes me so long to text. I could just get in the car and drive across town and knock on the person's door and tell them what I have to say, and then get in my car and drive back across town and get home in less time than it takes me to text, which I am embarrassed to admit, but I'm tired of carrying that secret around. So it's out there now. And
well, the truth shall set you free.
Well, that is true. And I do feel better. So thank you.
There you go. And that's the texting, because I text, I have thumbs the size of eggplants, and it's always a challenge. And what's amazing to me, and you may amaze you too, I have young children. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old, right?
Oh, I bet that's fun, though. I bet you have fun.
Is. I'm better at it now than I would have ever been. And these are my only kids. But so I have to be technology savvy, not
Yes.
proficient, just savvy.
Yeah.
And to watch them and their ability to text and the speed they do it at. Now, listen, they have shortcuts because my son has a phone, but we have a deal. That is my phone. I can pick it up anytime I want and look through everything in there.
Yeah.
Now,
Good
here's the other
deal.
deal. You have the passcode to my phone. You can do the same thing. You can pick my
Hmm.
phone up and go through anything you want. I'm totally cool with that. So we do that. And I literally did that this morning. And I've told him, I said, your friends know. And he goes, oh, I tell everybody that. Don't ever send me anything you don't want my dad to read.
Good.
Uh,
That's an excellent rule. And I think more people should implement that actually.
but it's amazing how few, the reason they can text so fast is how few letters they use.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's you have to decipher it and know the code, but they're not writing sentences like you and I would write.
Well, see, now that's the thing, and I appreciate you clarifying that. People laugh at me because I go to great because I'm a writer. I go to, and words matter to me. I love language. I love words. I always have. Even before I could read, knew I wanted to be a writer. So I would carry little books around with me that I couldn't read, but I loved books. And so when I text or email, I do everything within my power to make sure there's not a typo anywhere in it. So, it takes me for freaking ever to get, and it drives me crazy because I hate I hate autocorrect, and I absolutely hate it when you get down to the last and you only have a couple seconds to send a text and you keep hitting the wrong button and then it just goes from bad to worse and then you have to back out of it and it just drives me nuts. So anyway.
There is a 90% chance I would never use the word duck. I'm just saying. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
it's not one of my favorite foods, and I don't know many people. I don't know a text that's going to help you avoid an imminent strike. I'm just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I no.
And
But
the other
now,
thing I've noticed that drives me crazy is
yeah,
it will not let me say the word love. And I wonder what that's all about because I type in, oh, I would love to see you or sending my love or something like that. It never lets me type the word love. It drops the L and then it starts to guess other things I like move, shove. It takes me 5 extra minutes if I want to use the word love because it will not let me. And I'm wondering if that's by design so that it's out there in its nefariousness and it's trying to keep us from sending love and love. I don't know. I think there's something to that, but I have a big problem with the word love every
I
time
think it's the technology company just going after you.
could be.
Because I can say love, I
Can you?
love pizza, I love nachos, I love my wife,
But
and
you
so
don't
I've never
love
had it.
duck. You don't
But I
love
can't,
duck.
yeah, but I can't get anything to not translate as duck. So,
Well, see,
now,
okay, so it just picks certain words for each
yeah,
person and dinks with us about it now.
listen, sometimes they are out to get you, Carrie. That's not
I think
paranoia.
more times than not. I have to tell you, I'm
Absolutely.
becoming one of those tinfoil hat people. I'm thinking they're always out to get us now, is what I'm thinking.
If you don't see some conspiracy theories in part of life, that is you not paying attention.
Yes.
And just to get off on a tangent, but we used to laugh at the conspiracy theories. Now they tell us, "Oh no, this never happened," or "You got to be crazy to think this happened."
Uh,
And then 3 months later, "Oh yeah, well that happened, but we didn't try to hide it."
yeah. Yeah. I know. So everything is now a conspiracy fact. And that's the one thing my business partner Sandra and I kid about is we are down to the only conspiracy theory that I know of that has not actually happened yet. And I have a fear it's coming is lizard people. So I always tell her after we talk during our business meetings, or if we're friends, so we talk on the phone and stuff too. And I always end by saying, well, so far, I'm still okay because there's not been any lizard people yet. But as she says, just wait because it's coming. So that's the last. I'm down to lizard people.
Here's the good news: we
Yeah,
can always defeat them at night.
I'm sorry, what?
We could always defeat the lizard people at night
Okay, that
because
makes
they're
because
all
I didn't know
cold-blooded.
that was a chance. I didn't
They're
know
all
that was
cold-blooded, right? If you're a lizard person, you're cold-blooded.
okay.
You don't see
I
a lot of lizards at night, do you? Don't see any snakes at night. It's
thank
because they
you. I
have to
feel so
find it.
much better. Thank
They
you,
have to
Gary.
find a hole to warm up.
You have just taken so much pressure off of me. I can't even thank you because I've been bracing for it. I know it's coming. I know the lizard people are coming, and I that's the one thing I can't do, lizard
The good
people.
Lord has prepared me all of these years to give you this freedom,
I
right?
can't tell.
He goes, one day, Gary, one day, somebody is going to have a fear of the lizard people, and I'm going to tell you why they shouldn't worry about it, and you're going to share that. Boom,
God
just have it
love
in front of
you.
everybody.
I can't thank you enough. I'm going to have to really thank Chrissy for putting us together extra much for this because I don't think she knows of my lizard people fear. And so this was just a divine appointment. It was meant to be. And I just can't thank you enough.
Listen, when you write the book, on the invasion of the lizard people, it's just like War of the Worlds. How are you going to defeat these Martians? Oh, that's right, with the human cold. That's how we're going to defeat. Same thing with the lizard people. They're going to come at night. We get them.
Now, I would like to point out we're both now saying people. Have you noticed? We're both saying lizard people. Okay, so it's starting to
Absolutely.
come out already.
Oh, it goes out all the time. I was talking with a songwriter a couple of weeks ago who is from Alabama and
Oh,
has never lost her accent. And I said, I get it. And I was trying to explain to the audience. I said, you have to realize I was 18 years old before I realized that the bald peanuts I love so much were actually boiled peanuts.
I was kind of worried when you drawled out peanut. I was kind of worried what the rest of the word was going to be. I was a
It's
little relieved.
bald peanuts, right?
Yeah,
So you have bald peanuts, they sell them in a sack, they're delicious. And it was that before I'd ever seen it spelled out and
bald.
realized they were saying boiled
Yeah.
peanuts.
And that was a thing when I was in high school and junior high school. And I think it's a Southern thing. Everybody would
It
buy
is.
Dr. Pepper and put their salted peanuts in the bottle of Dr.
Well, now those
Pepper.
are the hard peanuts, right? That's a bag of salted peanuts, and it's RC Cola, by the way, is what you need to
Well,
know.
no, honey, no. It was Dr. Pepper in Waco,
Well, that
Texas,
may have
because
been
that's where Dr.
a
Pepper
Texas
originated.
thing because you were raised in Texas, right?
Yeah, and in Texas, it's an RC Cola and a moon pie.
Yeah, but in Alabama and northern Florida, it was an RC Cola, and then you would put the bag of salt. No, the boiled peanuts, they would sell them on the side of the road,
Oh,
and they'd
yeah.
have a big cauldron, and they would sell them in, and you'd get the shell, and they'd cook them in the shell, and you'd use your teeth, and you'd pull them apart, and then
Yep.
you'd suck out a little thing, and they were way too soft to put in it like a soda. But the little bag of salted peanuts, oh, that's
See
good
how you
living.
did it? You did peanut. That's what we do in the South, peanut.
Well, it's like
But that's the thing.
pecans.
The boiled ones, and maybe
Yeah.
not for you, but maybe it's a female thing. I don't know. The boiled ones make you slightly more flatulent than the dry roasted or the roasted ones. I'm just saying. I don't know if that was a thing with
I'm
you or
writing that
not.
down. Hold on, I'm writing that down. Let me
Yeah,
make
because
sure.
you might want to do a show on that. Here's
That
what we know about bald peanuts.
that
'Cause
would
I
explain.
do
I have
think,
4 sisters. That would explain a lot.
yeah,
A
I
a
think they're a
whole
little more
bunch.
leguminous when
Leguminous.
they're boiled. But anyway, we digress, and I don't know where we're going now, but I'll take your lead. And yeah,
It's
so
all right. So my thing is you knew you always wanted to be a writer?
yeah,
I mean, what was the book, or and do you even remember? What was the book or the series or whatever that made you go, I love how this person created this world and told me this story?
I loved a lot of books. when I finally got to where I could read. And that was the thing. Once it was time to read in elementary school, I would get and this is when we had class all in one room, because I'm old. But I would start reading and get so pulled into the story that I remember one time in third grade, the class had moved on to math and they had turned off the lights for the overhead projector for the math problems. And I didn't know it. I was still reading, and the teacher stopped the math lesson. And how they did Miss Pierce, we have moved on to math now. You might want to quit reading your story. And I mean, I was, totally embarrassed, and everybody pointed and laughed at me, but it was just compelling. And I remember, I think it was the beginning of third grade. I checked out a book, the Betsy Ross story, and it was about how she created the flag. And that was the first book I had ever encountered that had the crinkly book cover on it, that kind of cellophane crinkly book cover. And I remember sitting on the front porch of our house. I loved everything about that book. I loved how it smelled. I loved the story. I loved how it was written. I don't even remember who wrote it, but I loved hearing that crinkly cellophane book cover. There was just something magical about it. And I loved the collection of books that I loved Roald Dahl and his stories. And I think I love his writing, even his adult writing, where, and he's got some very interesting adult stories of murder and, perverse aspects of adult life that he handles or handled in such a beautiful, compelling way. I absolutely adored how he used words, and just many, many writers. But I remember in kindergarten and first grade, I just loved words, and I dreamed of being a writer. And I knew it was a near impossible feat to pull off, and that it took years and years of honing your craft and tons of misery. And it just seemed impossible, but I just knew that's what I was supposed to do. Didn't know the first thing about how to make it happen. And it was a process of just evolving through the course of my life as I entered into the film industry. And I did makeup and special effects for the film industry, and worked in Hollywood and stuff like that, and traveled around a lot. Then became an esthetician and a skin specialist. And it was there that I wrote health and beauty articles by the thousands. For men and women in midlife, especially. So it was kind of a progression for me. And when I was an angst-filled teenager, and who doesn't do this when you're an angst-filled teenager? Of course, I wrote a lot of poetry about not belonging in the world being a dismal place, that kind of stuff. So I had notebooks of that. So
I think when you say poetry, that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just like angst and vomiting my teen angst out on a page. So I have notebooks of that. But it was just a progression. And then I loved film, which is a very tedious, unlike radio. I love radio. Mom and I did radio too. But I loved the film industry, although when you work in the film industry, it is so incredibly tedious, everything that goes into setting up a shot. And I was blessed to work in the film industry before CGI, which I absolutely hate. And so it was an enormous creative undertaking. So it was also a different way to tell a story, was film. So, and did I even answer your question? I don't even.
No, listen, I love where it's going because it just leads to other things. When you say tedious, I like in the film industry. Now, I'm an English lit major, and I've had many authors on this show, some of my favorite ones. And not to compare myself to you at all, I don't. But I try to write little Substack columns every now and then. Just throw them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never thought about trying to write a book because it is the hardest thing in the world. Even when I have talked to successful authors who were, no, none of them's never easy. There's no such thing as an easy book. Even Hemingway writing 114 pages would sweat, toil, scream, drink, and even him ended up committing suicide because just couldn't take.
A lot of them do. And I forget who it was. It was a brilliant author. His name escapes me at the moment. One of my favorite sayings: writing is like giving birth to a bale of barbed wire. And it's true. But to the writing process, and this is where I think people get hung up. It's imperative that you let your first draft come. You almost vomit it out on the page without judgment. And you have to let yourself do that, because if you don't get your first draft without judgment out on the page, you have nothing to work with. And so people, I think that first draft just flows out and it's all perfect and it's all grand and marvelous. It doesn't work that way. And so you vomit out your first draft without judgment, and then you say everything, you just let it come. And then you go back, and that's when the craft of writing takes over, at which point you do the editing, the crafting, the choosing a different word, the reshaping of everything, the massaging, the honing, all of that. And you continue that process until you have it as perfect as you can possibly make it. And then I think the thing other people don't think about is there are editors out there in this world that make their living doing the grammatical stuff for you. So you can actually hire someone to help you with the areas where you're weak. Or if you have a good story to tell, you can then hire a professional writer to ghostwrite if they offer ghostwriting services. So there's a lot of ways to still write a book that doesn't have you sitting alone in your house giving birth to a bale of barbed wire. So
I and yes, you can do all of those things, but when you're an author and you sit back and you have to create, right? It's like I think it was the Elmo Leonard who said, "It's easy. You just sit down on the typewriter, cut your wrist, and bleed."
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
I've got that saying framed somewhere in my office here. Yeah, it's
yeah,
true.
and it is at some point because, like when you use the word tedious, well, film industry would be tedious because you're always waiting on someone else. I would think. I talked to an actress who was on a TV show, the This Is Us TV show, and I was telling her how we were watching a scene, and it was three people talking back and forth
Mhm.
on this loading dock. And I looked over at my kids and I said, "Have you ever thought about how many times they had to shoot the different angles? Because they had to set it all up to get, okay, now I got to get you. Okay, no, no, now I got to get you. Now I got to, okay, and we got to record and we get all of that stuff." And she goes, "I remember that scene. It took us 2 days and
Yep.
16 hours for 1 minute and 8 seconds of video." Why? Because you're waiting on everybody else. You're waiting for the lighting. You're waiting for and that's where the tedium, I would think, with writing, the tedium is right here. It's right in that skull of yours. And why won't it come out?
Mhm. Well, and that is true, and the film thing is interesting. I mean, there's always an element of magic on a film set, no matter what, even though you're gonna be there 23 hours of the day waiting for your 1 minute of film. It's hard to keep energy up, and continuity, you have to be very careful with continuity. So there's a lot there that I'm grateful for the experience. I worked in film for, most of my career, um, and I'm grateful for that because it trained my eye, and I see aspects and detail that most people don't, because you have to, especially as a makeup artist and special effects makeup artist, which is what I did. And I was grateful for the pressure, because if you screwed up your makeup effect, that screwed up everybody else's work, and it then wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. There was an enormous amount of stress. And so I think those things have helped me with my writing, because after I dump it on the page the first time, the crafting process comes more easily. And when I write, because of my film background, I'm able to write like a movie. So when I'm writing a scene, I can start from a certain camera angle and move through the interaction with the characters and be able to pull it together with words. I'm grateful for that. I think that might be somewhat rare, I think other writers that I've talked to either have to manipulate around the scene they're wanting to create, or they have to um, move their characters around, and that is tedious when you're having to move each character around and manipulate what comes out of their mouth so that you can get them to the next scene. I don't i don't have to do that because of my film background, and so I am grateful for that. um and it is interesting, but I always write with either film or TV in mind as I'm setting scenes. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because you're painting a picture in your mind, and you're also thinking of, well, would it look good for the sun to be coming from this angle, or the light hits them from over here, which is something that Flaubert never thought about, right? I mean, because it wasn't an option for him. Shakespeare didn't think about it because it wasn't an option. It was about the action. It was about the
Yeah.
action of the words, where
Hmm.
you have to think about how things are perceived, which is a
Yeah.
completely different. That's a completely different game.
That's an excellent point. And um I write all sorts of different things. The book I'm working on now, which I know you said you wanted to talk about, is about sex trafficking in the music industry, oddly enough, which is blowing up all around us now. But I write children's books, and my children's books are it's interesting to watch people look at them and try to really figure out what's going on with them, because when I write my children's books, number one, they are technologically obsolete on purpose. There is no modern technology in them. I do that by design. Kind of harkens back to our talking about our frustrations with AI and text and all of that business. I write my children's books for the adults as well. Um, I want children to be able to read my stories on their own, but they are um, I use big words and I don't talk down to children because I want to trigger conversation between the child and the parent, or the child and the grandparent, whoever is there helping them read the book on their own or reading it to them. I want the adult in the room having to read my book as a bedtime story. I want them to look forward to it as well. So there is a degree of all of that we just discussed, and having to set scenes that way that appeal to a child, that appeals will appeal to an adult, that will touch them in different ways, but then also the same way simultaneously. I write in my books about overcoming loss and experiencing grief and overcoming fear, those kind of things. And my children's books are pretty long. They're not short, paddable, fuzzy books. My last children's book, The Tale of Tommy Tomlinson's Tennis Shoes, is almost 40,000 words. And as an audiobook, it is 4 hours and 59 minutes. And the gentleman that did the voice work for my book, he's a voice actor.
What's his name?
What?
What's his name?
Josh Hurley. Josh
Josh
Hurley.
Hurley?
He's done several books, but he did an astounding job on my book. And my book has many, many different characters and many, many different accents. And then on top of flowing through all of those conversations with all of these different people that he gave a different voice to, he then did the narration. And I don't know how his brain did it, but he just did a phenomenal job. And I'm very tickled that Tommy is out there as an audiobook. And we're actually in the process, bless Chrissy's heart, she's doing this. We're trying to get him made into a film. And so we're going to be pitching to some family oriented studios. It's important to me, especially in today's world, that my children's books especially are kept wholesome and based in the importance of family and family values. So it's important that as we pitch to studios, um, we go with studios that are of that ilk. If yeah.
I love it. It's weird when you have to state that your agenda is to have no agenda.
Yeah, isn't we live
right?
in that world.
And
Exactly.
I love I love the fact that 40,000 pages because my kids are past that age of me reading to them anymore. But that's one of the things I always did. I literally uh, my youngest had health issues, so I couldn't do it right off the bat. But my oldest, when he was born, I read to him within him being alive for 2 hours.
Oh, how
Right?
precious.
Because I have always said reading is what saved me, and I don't mean in this, "Oh, it saved me from despair." It saved me as far as it taught me how to think. It taught me how to communicate. It taught me how to see things in a different way. So I'm such a big proponent of reading, and something you said, my wife has always laughed, is that homie don't do baby talk. Never has. I don't do baby talk. And I remember I was in the pool one day, and my son, who at the time was probably about 4, 5 years old, I'm standing there with my buddy who's over. They were over. And my son comes up and he goes, "Dad, how's a boat float?" And so I started explaining to him about, it's the whole creating enough surface space, the tension, and creating the dispersion level, and the whole thing. And he sits there and looks at me, and I get done. I said, that's how a boat floats. And he's like, okay. And he walks away, and my buddy goes, "Do you think he got any of that?" I said, "Hey, not my problem. I answered the question." That's what I did. And I will say both of my children have spectacular vocabularies. I mean, it's
It is
just
so
crazy.
important. It's so important. And, this brings up a sweet thing to share with you. My mom was a stickler that when we were growing up, my sister and I, we were well behaved in public and we knew proper etiquette and that we spoke well. And she came from a jazz background. She was a jazz singer in Chicago, and she knew the importance of the word. And when my mom delivered a lyric in a jazz song, she nailed it. She understood exactly every nuance in that lyric. She taught many, many pianists that always said they accompanied jazz singers. They would play over her. They would play around her. They would be this pianist. They weren't accompanying, and she would finally say to them, "I need you to sit down and read the words to the song. Have you ever read the lyrics to the song you're playing?" And most of them said no. And so she would sit down and recite the lyrics, and it dramatically changed their delivery of how they were playing and how they delivered that tune. And so when I was 5, I asked her one time as a 5-year old, grammatically incorrectly, "Is there any monsters?" Because I, was worried as the lizard people. I was worried about the lizard people at a young age.
This you
And
carried
my
this over
mom
from a previous life.
Oh, I know,
Something.
it's a probably
Yeah.
many,
This is
actually. I've
this
been
is a
worried about
genetic
lizard
memory.
people for centuries, apparently. Yeah. Um, but she answered me, "There's no any monsters." And so this became a thing between the two of us, um, throughout life, even when we were adults. If life got painful or horrible things happened, I would say jokingly, "Is there any monsters?" And she'd say, "There's no any monsters." Even when I was 50, she was telling me this, and that's how we jokingly comforted each other through horrible experiences. And so, in the tale of Tommy Tomlinson's tennis shoes, uh, there is the statement, "There's no any monsters." And I built the story around that there's no any monsters. And I asked mom when about 7 years ago, we were talking one day, and I said, "I have a question for you. Um, you were always such a stickler that we present well and that we be well read and well rounded and that we have good manners. Why is it when I asked you, is there any monsters? Why is it that you answered me back in a grammatically incorrect way?" And I will never forget, she got a serious look at her face and she stared off in the distance for a minute and she answered me. And she said, "Because in that moment, it was much more important to me that I teach you not to be afraid than to be grammatically correct. I knew I would have time to correct your grammar later, but at that moment, it was much more important to teach you not to be afraid. And I think when you have a good handle on language, and when you are well read, and when you speak well, you don't have to be pretentious in your vocabulary or any of those things, but when you speak well and when you respect words, it opens doors for you. And it it is a magic carpet, like you were kind of talking about earlier. You were touching on the importance of words and vocabulary and all of that. It is a skill. It is an art form, and unfortunately, we are losing it. And I feel the same about cursive writing. That breaks my heart that we're not teaching the youth today that beautiful art of writing. And, reading is important and reading is lovely. And I think this is changing now, and I'm happy to see it. And I spend a lot of time looking at it as an author. I think people are turning away from their blue screens. I think they are turning back to the printed word. I talk to a lot of people, adults and young people, that are wanting books again. They are hungry for the actual book. And to me, that means there's hope for us yet, because a book is just magic. You can make it your own. You can write in it if you own it. Don't be writing in books you get from the library, but you can make it your own. And that smell of a book and the way the pages feel, it's entering into a world. And we don't get that reading experience through screens. And so I'm feeling hopeful that adults and children alike are turning back to actual books you hold in your hand, and I just hope so.
I agree. I think the creative process is becoming more important. I don't think AI is going to replace the. As a matter of fact, it makes it value us more. It makes us value it more, right? Because
Yes.
there's something about the human spirit. My son had to write a short story for school the other day, and he asked me to read it, and I'm like, I love this because it sounds like I hear your voice, right? I hear the way you think, and that's the joy of it. And I'd say right off the bat, I don't. I'll get a book when I'm traveling, right? Because I like after a while the ear pods get in my that they hurt, and there's something about if you're going on vacation, a beach and a book work really really well.
Yeah, yeah.
Ear pods not so much, but I will also say this: I love audiobooks. I'm such an audiobook fan. I listen to them when I exercise, and I've got my favorite narrators, and so when you told me about Josh, I'll search him out because and an audio
Well,
the great reader can make a bad reader can make a great book bad,
oh,
but a
yes.
great reader can make a bad book good.
Oh, yes, that is true. And I think, and I find it interesting that you love audiobooks, because I do as well, although I still go to the hand. I want to read it myself and turn the pages and make my notes and underline things. But audiobooks harken back to like the Sears radio mystery theater
Yeah, the
days.
way
It's
early days of radio.
yes, and I
Back when
loved
I
those.
started, me
Yeah,
and Jack Benny.
exactly.
Let's talk about the inevitable end of life. Once I leave this earth, I can't do anything for my loved ones, but I've just learned by pre-planning a funeral or cemetery in advance takes the guesswork out when death occurs suddenly and your mind is clouded with grief. Dignity Memorial can help. My friend Tina Skurla pre-plans funeral and cemetery arrangements so loved ones don't have to. They're North America's largest provider of funeral, cremation, and cemetery services. They're dedicated to getting every detail right, and they do that by listening to you. I know it's a hard subject, but I also know we all see the sense and value of what Dignity Memorial does. Use the promo code Gary to get 25% off at Willow Glen Funeral Home. Reach out to my friend Tina Skurla today. She's committed to helping families not go through the tragedy of loss alone. Click on the link, use the promo code Gary, or email her at dmppatinaskurla.com, or call 408-398-7050.
And when I was a teenager, and I guess I remember when I was 13 and 14 years old, I listened to Glenn Miller and I'm not that old. I listened to Glenn Miller, and every Saturday I had to listen to Chicken Man. Do you remember Chicken Man?
Bok, bok. He's
Yeah.
everywhere. He's everywhere.
I had to listen to Chicken Man, and I loved radio theater. And so I think if we play it right, we can steer the young people of today away from their screens and away from their phones and at least back to good quality audiobooks. And the thing about AI that you bring up an excellent point about, and I couldn't agree with it more, you can tell when somebody has just done something through AI. It strips out the human essence. It strips out the heart and soul. It just destroys everything. You get this homogenized. Everybody sounds the same. It's just a horrible thing. I hate it, and I worry about where it's going. It's stripping the human spirit, the human heart, the human mind, the human experience, um, human passions out of everything.
I think it'll end up making it more valuable, in my thing, because you'll start to understanding. Here's another thing, and I mean, this is just me getting off on a tangent. With all the technology, I don't think you're going to trust any like political speech that you don't see with your own eyes.
Yeah.
So therefore, 70 and 80-year-old men and women probably aren't going to be able to run for president because they're going to be able to hit it. You're going to need to hit 6 states in a day.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's going to, I think it'll bring back a lot more authenticity, because my favorite expression is nothing ever happens the way you think it will.
Oh, yeah.
Never. So the stuff that it'll all turn around. But let me move on, because I'm going to run out of time, and I don't want to run out of time with you. Tell me about the book you're working on now and how you came to write it.
Oh my, I'll have to condense this. When Mom was
We have 20 minutes left, but so take
okay,
your
well, I'll
time.
talk fast.
I'm just saying, I know you and I are going to, because we've already done it. And I just looked at my clock and I'm like, holy moly, 40 minutes has gone by.
I know, I can't believe it. Okay, so Mom was a jazz singer in Chicago. She performed under the name Laurie Allen, which was spelled Allyn, and she was discovered singing at a prestigious club in Chicago, and they flew her to Hollywood to make an album. And she did, and she had incredible jazz musicians on her album. The company went bankrupt and didn't tell her, so it destroyed her. It just crushed her, because her album was never released until 2004. And it is a CD by the name of Paradise. And it was entered into the Grammys as a historical Grammy. It didn't win, but it was lovely. She waited 50 years for her dream to come true. And it's all over the world now, and it's been very well received. And I feel very blessed that now that she's gone, I can still hear her voice. So I'm very, very grateful for that gift. But when Mom was singing in Chicago, she was very young. She had moved from a small town in Texas when she was in her early 20s, and she had ended up singing in Chicago when she was about 22. And she went from a small town in Texas to the middle of the mafia. And especially in the 50s, the mid to late 50s, there was a lot of mafia stuff going on. And she was smack dab in the middle of it. And she didn't know. Bless her heart, she was so naive. And 2 gangsters kind of took her under their wing. And they were named, actually, and I kid you not, Lefty and Itchy. And they, I guess, recognized how gullible and naive and sweet and innocent Mom was. And she was living in the middle of all of this. And so I grew up hearing these stories about at the time, it was just prostitution. The mafia was in charge of prostitution and entertainment. It was always perversive there. And, it was everywhere. Pervasive, not perversive, but it was perverse too. But Lefty and Itchy were numbers runners for the mob. And I asked Mom, well, what did you think they did? And she said, with a straight face, of course, she then found out later, she said, I thought they carried bingo numbers back and forth between churches. I thought that's what a number runner was they got the bingo cards to churches. And I said, no. And she said, well, I know that now. And so these were numbers runners. And so then we talked and I said, well, Mom, how do you think Itchy got his name? And she said, well, back then, and I know better now, back then I thought he just had a skin condition. And I said, itchy trigger finger never crossed your mind. She said, no, I didn't know anything about that. So Lefty and Itchy kind of shepherded Mom through this underground world of show business in Chicago run by the mob in the 50s. And there were many, many encounters with mafia there, and some were humorous, and a lot of them were really horrible. She ended up living in an apartment building where the gangsters kept their molls, MOLLS, their squeezes, their mistresses.
People
And
who
she
were
was
not
not
their wives.
one.
Yeah.
Hmm?
I said people who were not their wives.
Yes, there we have it. Yes. Different types of acquaintances. And so she was not one, but she lived in this apartment building where these mafia guys would come and go. And, the women were there with their furs and everything. And it was the only apartment Mom could afford. Well, it got to the point where she started to see disturbing things and realized she was kind of in over her head. And so she moved. And 24 hours after she left that apartment, the beautiful, gorgeous neighbor of hers who had a very promising modeling career, she had been signed with one of the big, huge modeling agencies of the time, which I will not release their name. But a couple was waiting for the elevator on what had been Mom's floor. They kept pushing the button and the elevator didn't come, and kept pushing the button and the elevator didn't come. Finally, the elevator came and the doors opened, and this beautiful woman was just totally filleted in the elevator. And, Mom had missed that by 24 hours. And apparently, either she was about to spill the beans on something or she was cheating on her mafia boyfriend and he had found out. But this woman was butchered in the elevator. And so I grew up, hearing all of these stories. And when it was my time to go to Hollywood and Las Vegas for my career, I was the same age that Mom had been when she went to Chicago. And the best piece of advice she gave me before I got in the car to leave, she said, I want to remind you, there is no such thing as a legitimate business dinner if it's just you and a man. They can call it a business dinner. They can lure you there. It's not legitimate. So I want you to remember that. And sure enough, the things I saw in Hollywood and Las Vegas, it boggles my mind that I got out of there alive because I was just as gullible and naive as she had been in Chicago. So as Mom was dying, the day before she died, she was laying in bed at the hospice facility, and I had my arms around her and she was looking out the window. And I said, what are you thinking about? And she said, well, I know it's vain, but I would love it if you would take Becoming Billy, which is the name of her. It was serialized under that name years and years ago. And if you would make it a novel and update it a little bit and bring it into today's world, that is my last legacy piece. And it would mean a lot to me if you would work on it. And so I promised her I would. And after she died, it took everything I had to survive. We were so close. We were two parts of the same body. And when she died, it was like 3/4 of me was amputated. And there was a part where I just wanted to die because I thought, I can't. There's no color in my world anymore. She was my best friend. We had just moved to a new place where we knew nobody, and we didn't know she was sick. So the minute we came here, we were starting to move here. She went into kidney failure overnight with no warning. Turns out she was eaten up with multiple myeloma, and it was just the two of us. And she said, we're going anyway. We said we were moving. We're moving. And so 2 months later, I was living in a place I knew no one, and she was gone. And so it took everything I had not to kill myself because it was just the grief was crushing. I had nobody. It was the horrible trauma. And the only thing that kept me going was my promise that I had to write this book. And so, we're coming up on 3 years now, and I wrote my children's books, and that has helped the process. And so I can't go anywhere till I write, Mom's book. And hopefully by now I've stabilized and my grief is not so scorching. But so that's how the book came about. And she did want to talk about the truth of the entertainment industry. And I think it's there in everything, and we're seeing it explode all around us now. I saw it in Hollywood in the 80s, satanic Satanism in Hollywood. It was pervasive. You could feel it. Pedophilia, you could feel it. It was there. You saw it. The music industry, and now this with P. Diddy and then the Epstein tapes. By the time all of this blows up, the entire entertainment complex is going to be decimated. And I think politicians will be brought down, sports figures will be brought down. And so I thought I had time to get this book written. I was kind of taking my time on it. We were going to launch it in April for Billie Holiday's birthday, because it evolves around a Billie Holiday singing competition. And so I'm having to really hurry with this, but I want to make sure I get everything right and that it's well put together, and that it is, even though it's a fictionalized novel, it does address the international sex trade in the entertainment world. And so Becoming Billie, a novel, is the book I'm working on, and it is Mom's. And I do want to make sure your listeners understand there is another book out there that is a middle reader called Becoming Billie Holiday, and it is how Eleanora Fagan, which is Billie Holiday's real name, got through life and became Billie Holiday. It's a beautiful book. It is not this one. And I want to make sure that your readers understand that. So this book that I'm writing and that Mom laid the groundwork and the skeleton for is Becoming Billie, a novel. And we checked into when her serialized stories appeared in the women's magazines, and from legal issues, we were there first with this name. So we want to be very respectful of the other book. We want to make sure that other book is separated, and because it looks like it's a beautiful book for young readers. And the thing that is interesting about Billie Holiday that ties into the story is she had an extremely difficult upbringing in her youth. And she was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Hard life.
And she was an errand runner in a brothel. And I don't even want to think about what kind of errands you have run at a brothel. But so there is some connection there with sex trade and Billie Holiday too. And then she certainly went on in her own life experiences in the music industry, fell prey to heroin, alcoholism, sex abuse. So this pedophilia and sex trade has been an underlying current in our entertainment industry for decades and decades and decades. I mean, even as far back as silent films and Charlie Chaplin, and even before that. So It is a topic that I think right now is very hot and important, but I think people are not prepared for what they're about to see and hear.
I completely agree. As weird as this sounds, and I'm going to realize what I'm saying with this is going to sound. At least with the mob, you knew it was pretty much about the money, right? It was about the prostitution, and then they got into the drugs, and I mean they got into the music business. I mean, go read the story of Tommy James and the Shondells. I mean, that was a mob controlled, and they were all over the music industry.
Oh yeah,
Frank Sinatra, all of them. And you should, if you want your heart broken, read about Billie Holiday. because
Oh,
it will
yeah.
break your heart.
And Miles
Uh,
Davis, too, from a
and
male
Miles
standpoint,
Davis,
he had a horrible thing. And my uncle played French horn for Sinatra for years and years and years and had actual mafia encounters traveling with Frank, but that's a story for another time.
yeah,
But yeah,
and the
no, you're
story,
right. And it was just air quotes prostitution and drugs. And now it is something infinitely more sinister. The pedophilia, the Satan
yeah.
worshiping, it's all intertwined now.
Well, I have this theory, and I'll bounce it off you that I have said before that I think something happens in the mind of the very rich and the very famous that they replace. And again, I'm a man of faith. I know you have. I know you have a deep faith. They
Yes.
replace God with themselves,
Oh,
and they
absolutely.
start thinking. They start thinking that I am chosen by God. Because if you were chosen by God, you would have all this money and this fame and this power. And so anything that comes into my head must be okay.
Yeah.
And it is the I agree with you. I think the P Diddy thing and the fact that we Epstein. Let's go with Epstein. Let's just broach that fact. The fact that this guy dies in prison while under a suicide watch, and we don't even bat an eye. And matter of fact, it's become kind of a lexicon in the language now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hope he doesn't Epstein.
Yeah.
When we
And
see,
the camera didn't work.
yeah, I mean, and
I mean,
we're,
like,
I mean,
what's up
if
with
that
that?
was not a mob hit, I don't know what was, right? But we don't know how to define the mob anymore.
Yeah,
That
that's very true.
we knew that there were the Italian mobs and there were the Jewish mobs and there was the Russian mobs.
Oh,
We
they're
don't know how to.
everywhere. The countries have all sorts of them, and you bring up an excellent point. And getting back to the I'm God thing,
Mhm.
what I think people don't realize or factor in, Satan delivers goods quickly because that's how he hooks you. So all of this quick fame and tons of money and Lamborghinis and $5,000 shoes, it's just boom, 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 boom. There it is. And God grows you in the process so that you can handle it and serve. So if things are happening overwhelmingly fast and all of that, in my way of thinking, I step back and I think how much of this is Satan, how much of this is darkness. Because am I really growing along to be able to handle this, or is this being used as a weapon to pull me off track? Is this being used as a hook to lure me away from the light and from true service? And God is generous and loving and wants us to prosper and be successful and serve others and have productive lives. He wants all of that for us. But as a good father, he wants us ready to handle it. So there is a nurturing process that occurs, which means our blessings perhaps come slower than we would like, but they are still promised and they come. But they come in the ways that are healthy for us. And I think if you're in a place where you feel you are positioned above others, I'm a firm believer in pride goeth before a fall. And when you have hubris, yeah, that's not a good place to be because, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, when you have Jesus himself call Satan the prince of lies and the father of lies, I mean, he wasn't taking him lightly.
Mhm.
But the P Diddy thing again, this is just me and you talking, right? And I know the other stuff, and this is just tangential. But the only thing that makes this different is the amount of celebrities who are tangentially already a part of this. People who have had, oh yeah, I go to the T Diddy parties, Puff Daddy, Ping
Who's
Ponging, I
changed
don't
his
know.
name so many times, I can't
Yeah.
keep that.
And they've admitted it on tape. And there's also the rumor that there is video. And if the video comes out, wow. And I also worry about we're going to excuse people's behavior based on their politics. And I think that's when things are going to get very interesting, because there's only so many times that the emperor can walk through with no clothes on
Yeah.
before somebody goes, the emperor has no clothes.
I think we're past that, to be honest with you. And that is a good point. I think enough people are awake now. It's going to bring down everything. It's going to bring down both sides. It's going to bring down Democrats. It's going to bring
Exactly,
down
both
Republicans.
sides.
It's going
Yeah.
to bring down judges. It's going to bring down sports figures. It's going to bring down singing figures. It's going to bring actors that we've loved and adored and cherished and their work. There's a lot of them that are pedophiles, and that's going to be coming out. And there are videos, and they are deeply disturbing. And there are videos with Epstein that are deeply disturbing. But I think with Diddy, and I've had to listen to a lot of these things. I have heard things in audio tapes I will never get out of my head, because in order to make this book believable, I need to be current on what's happening. And so I've heard these rapes happening over his desk, and as I've listened to them, and they're horrifying, and they sound like Satan slaughtering an animal. And I mean, once you hear a human being make these kind of sounds, you can't unhear that. And so there is a component with Diddy that I think is slightly different, although they're both predators. I think what's shaken out with Diddy now, Epstein was definitely a predator, and the people that gave him business were pedophiles and predators. But with Diddy, there is a degree of satanic predator, a deeply, deeply disturbing degree of evil. And just yesterday or day before, they brought down the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch. And then his two right-hand men in that company for preying upon young men models for 20 years and trafficking young male models. So it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And now that brings in corporate and fashion. So those are two more prongs that we didn't have a week ago with just Diddy. Now we have the whole entire corporate world. And there are tons of CEOs in the last year and a half that have stepped down and retired and gone away. That's because they know what's coming. And they've been involved in this.
Wow. If they don't have Diddy in a padded room with round the clock guards, dude, this is just empirical evidence here. Look at Epstein. Look at throughout history. People have a way of mysteriously dying in captivity. I'm just saying,
Well,
especially when you got people on both sides who are going to fall
that's
because of you.
absolutely true. What I worry about is who's messing with the food. Because that's probably where it's going to have to come from this time. Because if Epsteined himself, everybody's looking for that to happen. So I think it's going to be a slow poison, is what I'm thinking.
Or a pathogen,
Yeah,
we're gonna give him some rare flu, rare disease that all of a sudden he's going to have smallpox or whatever, the plague, something that we don't have how did it get in there? Oh, we don't know. It was an airborne virus. We should all wear masks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But, here's the thing to close, and I know and I don't care if we're over our time, because this is a great conversation. I think it's important, but I know you have time to keep. There are no checks and balances at the border. The border is wide open, and they know for a fact these children are coming in not only with people that are not their families.
That's documented, by the way.
Yes,
That's documented. That's not opinion. That's documented.
No, it's documented. And what is also documented that they are now admitting is a lot of these children are visibly drugged when they come over. They are visibly drugged, and that is now openly being talked about. We have misplaced hundreds of thousands of children that have come across the border in just the last 3 years. Where are these children? Where are these children? They're somewhere. And, I remember when I was a teenager, that's when they first started introducing pictures of missing children on the back of milk cartons. Well, I remember thinking, this is freaky. This is new. I've never seen this before. where are what happened to those children? What's happening to the children today? They're somewhere. They're somewhere.
And the vast
And
majority of those kids on milk cartons were never found. Vast majority.
Somebody said the other day, and this freaked me out so much. I could not even, it gave me chills for like an hour. They have a theory now that, and this is going to sound like I really need to wrap my head in tinfoil, but I heard two people talking about this, and they are in the industry of looking for these children. That flew under the guise of help us find these children, when actually it was you could order them. That if you called that number, it was like a little catalog of, okay, oh, he's attractive. This little boy's attractive. I think I'll buy him. And I mean, that freaked me out so bad I could not even. But this is why I'm telling people, you need to get ready, because in the next 6 months, probably inside of a year, we are going to be told things and shown things that are going to undo everything we ever thought we knew. And we are going to hear heinous, horrible, hideous things with pictures and videos and audios. And we need to get ready. We need to get ready spiritually. We need to get ready psychologically. We need to get ready mentally and emotionally, because there has been an underground prevailing evil in our entertainment industry, things that we have been spoon-fed for a reason, that we bought and didn't even question. It's just going to do everything.
That. I mean, that's the thing. We all know that. I think if you're honest with yourself, you know that. You see it. You see some of the things they make movies about and TV shows about. And I mean, it's just, and the fact that it got okayed. Was it a couple of years ago? I think there was a show on either Showtime or HBO, one of the premium channels, about young, like 10 to 13-year-old girls, basically living this wanton lifestyle, and it was glorified. And even people who would consider themselves very progressive were like, hey, y'all, this is probably not what. And the actresses were 10 to 13 years old.
Yeah.
And then they were like, we probably shouldn't be doing this. So when you see that, there is that element of truth that we all know at some point. And I'm not a prude. Listen, anything you want to do between adults and stuff, if you're willing to risk your money to do a $200 million Joker movie that you then proceed to lose $200 million, I think you should always be able to make that movie. I really do.
Yeah.
But you don't get to call me a name when I don't go see it. And sooner or later, you're starting to see this. You're starting to see more and more of these family oriented, because the biggest money makers of the year tend to be PG-13 movies.
That's what it's going to take. It's going to take decent people to stand up and say enough is enough. And the hypersexualization of children has been going on the last 20 years. And I think, in my opinion, that's kind of what the whole Madonna thing was about. And Taylor Swift, and her, when Taylor Swift first showed up, and she showed up in a wholesome format, and I think that was a Trojan horse, because we hooked a lot of young girls with her being wholesome, and then all of a sudden she morphed into this absolute unbelievable thing that she is today. And so the hypersexualization of children has been going on, unfortunately, for quite some time. And it is going to be up to us to stand up and stop it. And the lyrics to songs, and how did any of this ever start to become okay? And the thing that I think we missed, that we probably should have spent more time on, was years ago, when you look at the number of young Disney actors and actresses that are so, bless their hearts, massively dysfunctional now. They went through something horrible
Yeah.
to come out the other end addicted to drugs. The Justin Bieber, the Britney Spears
Britney
people,
Spears is the poster
something
child.
happened to
Yeah,
these people,
absolutely.
and it was
Absolutely
not
something.
good.
And I think it changed. I mean, and listen, I have a different take as far as like Taylor Swift, because I'm in the country music industry. And I met her when she was 14, 15 years old. I think she became so removed from everyday life. After a while, when you're a billionaire and you have everybody around you who's depending on you, and they anything. And so it becomes very important. You start again, we get back to what I think must matter. Because look at me.
Yeah.
And I think you get so removed from it when you don't know how much a gallon of milk costs. You have no idea what buying groceries at Costco is like, right? And you just become more and more removed. And I think that's Hollywood. I think that's the upper echelons of money, everybody. Uh, and it changes you, and you start thinking Jeffrey Epstein, you start thinking P. Diddy, this is what matters, because it's and it just so removes you from everyday life. Uh, I uh, I was talking to it back in 2008 when the economy died,
Oh,
and I
yes,
was
that was
in
horrible.
England. I was in England at the time, and I was talking to this kid. I was standing in line to go to see the play in a Globe Theater. It's kind of cool, and but I was talking to this kid who's an economist, and he goes, "We really need to worry about financial problems more than ever." And I said, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "Because in the last 100 years, the vast majority of the population doesn't grow their own food."
Yeah,
That should make you that should make you sit up and take notice.
that's true.
So, and we have got all of us have gotten so far removed from so many things, but now we have different levels of separation. So it's crazy. Listen, I have enjoyed this conversation, and I know I was going to enjoy this conversation.
I
I
have as
cannot
well.
wait for your book, Becoming Billy. You're going to hopefully have that out here soon, and I can't wait to see where it goes from, and I can't wait to listen to the audio book.
Well, as I'm writing this, I'm thinking, okay, Becoming Billy does need to be an audiobook, because there's a
Absolutely.
lot of components to it. I can hear the guy narrating it. I can hear a voice. But well, thank you. This has been a joy, Gary. It's been a real pleasure. I hope we have talked about something of interest to your listeners and viewers today. And I think Chrissy was right. I'm glad she orchestrated this and put us together.
Well, Chrissy's a mutual friend of ours. And so, yes, and obviously, and listen, here's the secret of podcasting. You don't do stuff that's interesting for other people. You do stuff that's interesting for you, and then let you
That
find it.
is true. That
And
is
so
true.
that's what we've done. Carrie E. Pierce, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Gary Scott Thomas. I've just loved it, and I appreciate the opportunity.